Hey everybody, and welcome back to the internet once again. Hope you're all having a good start to your week, but if not, maybe I can make it a little better with some stories. Starting with, entitled kid probably got nightmares after entitled mom demanded that her son plays a game on my computer. So for some context, I still live in my parents' house since my university is really close, so I don't need to get myself an apartment. This story happened about a year ago. So the story, on a beautiful Sunday morning, I got woken up by my mother telling me that she has invited my aunt with her kids for lunch. Now, to be honest, I never liked that particular aunt that much, but what can you do? So about 2 hours later, the family comes over, we have our lunch, and afterwards we sit around in the living room and chat about. At some point, I noticed from the corner of my eye one of my aunt's kids going into my room. Now, I had my computer open, and I was a bit afraid that he might do something to it, so I followed him. Now, that kid was about 8 at the time. He should be in no way allowed to play violent video games. And me being an avid gamer, most, if not all the games I had installed, were rated as PEGI 18, meaning they were to be played by people over 18. The conversation went like this. Kid says, "Do you have any games?" I do, but they're not for you. These are grown-up games. "But I want to play." "I'm sorry, but you can't." At this point, the kid runs out of the room and to his mom. He says, "OP doesn't let me play his games." His mom comes in and says, "Come on, let him play some games. He has nothing else to do." I say, "The games I have on my computer are not for his age. They're all violent and disturbing at times." She says, "But my little boy wants to play. Can't you let him play?" I say, "I'm sorry, but these games are not for your child." "Excuse me. We are guests, and you have to do what we say. Just let him play." At this point, I've gotten really angry, and in hindsight, I should have just opened the Flash game website and let him play. But this computer was my most prized possession, having built it myself with mostly my own money, and I would not let an 8-year-old play freely with it because I was afraid that he could damage it. Also, my malicious compliant side came out at that moment, so I did not pass the chance for some good old MC. I say okay to both mom and child and take the kid with me. I open Outlast. For those who don't know, Outlast is a horror game with many disturbing images and scary scenes, especially for an 8-year-old, and let him play. Not even 5 minutes in, I hear a scream from the room and see the entitled kid run crying to his mother. She says, "What the heck did you make him play? What's wrong with you?" I said, "I told you before, my games are not for young children. They're for adults, but you wouldn't listen." The mom straight up picked up her children, one still crying, and left the house. After I told my mom exactly what I did, she burst out laughing. Learn to listen to people when they warn you. My favorite line in this whole thing is, "We are the guests and you have to do what we say." Because yeah, that's how things always work. Anyways, let's move on to entitled mom leaves her son alone on my porch for hours. So a little backstory. I recently moved into a new house in a small town, the kind where everyone knows everyone. I moved to this town from a bigger city, so it was a bit of an adjustment, but I liked the quiet, and it was closer to my new job, which was a plus. My new job was at a daycare center that opened at 6 in the morning. I requested the opening shift so that I would get off at 2 p.m. and be able to have some free time in the afternoon. Now, when I moved into the neighborhood, a few of my neighbors stopped by to welcome me and give me plates of cookies, casseroles, etc. One woman and her family came by to say hello and asked me where I worked. I told them I was a daycare worker. She says, "Oh really? I've been looking for somewhere to have my boy stay while I'm at work over the summer. What ages do you watch?" I say, 5 to 6-year-olds. She says, "That's perfect." She says this with a smile. I say, "Yeah, we'd be happy to see him in my class if you ever decide to enroll him." This was the seed that would sprout into a giant tree of crazy. Now on with the show. So it was a typical morning for me, up at the butt crack of dawn and out the door at 5:45 to get to work by 6. It was a pretty uneventful day, nothing major happened, so by the time 2 p.m. rolled around, the day had flown by. Come to find out that this is the case for everyone today. I arrived home to find a police car, an entitled mother with her 5-year-old son talking to the police on my porch. I was confused as there was no reason for her to be there, and no one had tried to contact me about anything happening at my house. I park and get out of my car and start to walk to the house, and I call out, "What's going on?" The entitled mom was not talking to the police, she was screaming, and upon seeing me she completely exploded. She says, "How dare you leave my son outside all day? He could have been kidnapped." She continued on like that as 2 police officers approached me. One says, "Excuse me, miss, but did you leave this boy outside while you were gone?" I say, "No, I left for work early this morning. I'm just now getting home. I've been at work all day." At this point I look over at the entitled mom and her son. The son was filthy. It looked like he'd been playing in the dirt. His knees was scratched but not bloody, and he was holding an open backpack that had contained a coloring book and crayons based on what was laying all over the porch. The officers looked stunned a bit and looked at each other. They asked me to follow them, and we make our way onto the porch. She says, "Aren't you going to arrest her? She endangered my son. What kind of babysitter are you?" I say, "Babysitter?" She says, "Yes, you're a babysitter. You told me when I stopped by before." "Well, some babysitter you are. Look what you did to my son. You said you'd be happy to watch him." Me finally understanding what's going on. "Oh, no, you misunderstood me. I work at a daycare a few minutes away. I don't run a daycare out of my house. I said I would be happy to have him in my class at the daycare." She says, "Don't lie. You're just trying to cover yourself." The police say, "Can you prove that you were at the daycare today?" I say that I could pull out my phone and called the center. The police officer talked to my boss for a few minutes before handing me back my phone. They say, "Ma'am, was this woman here when you dropped your son off?" She says, "Yes, she was. I saw her through the window." She says, "Ma'am, her boss just confirmed that she was at work." She cuts him off. "She's lying. I bet she just called a friend to cover herself. I bet you don't even have a job. That's why she has to run a crappy babysitter service out of her crappy house." I say, "I just got home from work. There weren't even any cars in the driveway." She says, "Yes, there was. You probably left through the back door. You were supposed to watch him. You said you would watch him, and you never opened the door for him to come inside. He's hungry and thirsty, and look at him. He's covered in dirt. You should have let him in and watched him." I'm like, "Weren't you listening? I'm not a babysitter. I work at a daycare. I said I'd be happy to watch him if you enrolled him there." She says, "She's lying." The police says, "Ma'am, did this woman speak to you this morning about watching your son?" I say, "No, like I said, I was at work by 6. "Have the two of you ever set up a time for you to watch her son?" "No, this is only my second conversation with her. The first was me explaining where I work. I guess she got confused." Says, "You lying little jerk. I'm going to tell everyone how crappy you are at babysitting, and you'll never get any work again. Good luck keeping your house when you're unemployed." I say, "For the last time, lady, I'm not a babysitter." "Ma'am, you left your child here without any confirmation that anyone was even home?" "So? She's a babysitter. She's supposed to watch him." I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to arrest you for child endangerment." The entitled mom then turns from angry to furious and begins yelling at me for misleading her and saying she's going to sue me. It's been a few weeks now. The mom was let go, for whatever reason, and the little boy goes to the daycare I work at now. I just wish I had pictures of the entitled mom's face when she realized I was her son's teacher and that I wasn't lying after all. But that's a story for another time. It's always great when the plans of these entitled people just kind of backfires on them. If you're an entitled person and you call the police on someone, you'll probably be the one to get arrested. I don't know, it's weird how that works. But let's move on to entitled child damages a lot of $1.5K to $25K instruments. So at the time of this story, I was in 8th grade. I was the first oboe and an English horn player at my school, and during this time I was doing lessons for beginners or kids who wanted to play on the side and not in a band class. This takes place at my dad's music store at the time when 5th graders went to try out for instruments for the 6th grade. And since my dad has the only music store in town, we had about 30 people at each instrument booth at a time. Anyways, onto the story. So just before the main part of this story starts, I'm going to throw in this little mini story of something that happened earlier this day. I was packing up after band class because it was the last class of the day, and as I'm taking apart my 2 instruments when one of the flute players, this kid was someone who considered everyone who was better than him competition, pulls my chair backwards, resulting in my head slamming into the music stand behind my chair, and into the bass clarinet player, which started a domino effect of almost every chair and stand getting knocked over. Luckily in that incident my instruments weren't damaged, and the band director gave the kid in-school suspension for 3 days. I quickly cleaned my instruments, packed them up, and then joined my twin brother and older brother. And we started walking to our dad's music store, which was about a half-mile away. About 15 minutes later, we get to the store and walk through the horde of people trying to get to the stations with their children. I walked in and was going to the back where they do repairs and keep instruments and such. The door didn't have any signs saying people shouldn't go into it because it was always closed and nobody ever went in. I walked in and set my stuff down on the counter when I saw a lady walk in and look around. I saw her and walked over to her and this ensued. I say, "Excuse me, ma'am, this is a staff-only area." She says, "What do you mean? You're back here and you're not a worker." She then scanned me and tried to intimidate me, I guess, but this lady was like 5'6", and I was 6'1", so it did nothing. I say, "I'm the owner's son and help with repairs, not just some random person who walked into the back part of the store." She says, "Can't make me get out." She then proceeds to try and run, but she's wearing flat sandals, so she tripped immediately, and then walked out while at the same time giving me the finger. About 10 minutes later, when the booths opened up, the store flooded with a lot of people. I made my way over to the oboe booth and put up the instruments for display with signs on each individual stand saying, "Please do not take without supervision." and then I started playing a concerto for English horn to get some people to come over. Soon, about 20 children with their parents were waiting for me to finish before asking about the instruments. I finished, and then I started talking to the parents and their kids about what they wanted and options, etc. I bent down for a minute to write on a note card the model of the instrument they wanted and the price, accessories, etc. I hand him the paper when I see the entitled mom and the kid next in line. I say hello and ask what they are looking for, and she replies in an r/entitled mom voice. Says, "My son wants to play the oboe, and I want you to show me the most expensive model." I say, "Unfortunately, that's not how instruments work. Your child will need to try multiple to find the right one for him." She says, "Just give it to me." The most expensive model that they sell at the shop is the model I have, which is a Lowry Paris Royal oboe, which costs $9,700. I just decide sure, and show her my oboe since it was already in my hand and explained her everything. She goes, "That sounds great, thank you." Then she grabs my oboe from my hand and starts to walk to the counter. I stood there for a second confused and then bolted over to her and snatched it out of her hands and ran behind the counter. Then this happened. She gives out a banshee scream. "That kid just stole my son's instrument!" There were about 200 people in the store and it was dead silent and everyone stared at her. She says, "Give that back, you little turd!" She then proceeded to yeet herself over the counter and fall on the floor and screech. But while she was doing this, I looked over and saw horror as her kid started to charge at the booths. I internally died and jumped over the counter and ran to try and grab my English horn because I needed it for band, but I didn't make it and the kid rammed himself into the booth, knocking the table down along with every instrument on it. I heard the sound of plastic and wood hitting the ground. I grabbed the kid as he tried to run away and shoved him to the ground and ran over to the booth to see the damage. It was bad. The first thing I saw was about 30 instruments laying on the ground. Then I saw bent metal keys, cracked wood and plastic, and about $30,000 in damage. I then saw entitled mom and entitled kid trying to run, but people stopping them and holding them. My dad called the cops and showed the cops the security footage, and the entitled mom was arrested for destruction of personal property, and ended up later being charged for the entire price of the repairs to the instruments and any damage to the store. And aside from that day, went fine, I guess. Just wanted to add to the extent of the damages here. We had to shut down servicing and repairs for a month because in the workshop was full of oboes and horns, stripped of keys, and every part of the main body that was damaged had to be repaired because cracks in a woodwind is not very ideal. Well, they were looking for the most expensive instrument to buy, so hopefully they had lots of money to throw at all those damages. Alright, this will be the final story for today, called Entitled Mom Forced Me to Break Up with Her Daughter Because I'm a Little Overweight. So I'm 17 years old and in good shape. I was a little overweight my whole life, but nothing serious. The only thing was that it showed quite easily and I walked a little weird. I had this girlfriend who was really kind, not entitled at all, so not the problem in this story. She was the same age as me. Her mother was a Karen and never really approved of me. This is what happened when I was 16 years old. So one day I was home and studied for a test the next day. I heard the doorbell and someone shouted behind the door. I recognized the voice inside. This is how the conversation goes. So the entitled mom says, "Hey OP, open the door. I'm your ex's mother." I open the door. I say, "Hey entitled mom, how are you doing? Is there anything wrong?" She says, "Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about your ex for a second. I don't like you being around her so much. It makes me uncomfortable." I say, "Why? Did I do anything?" She says, "You're not exactly the most athletic person in the world, right? I don't like that you make her think it's okay to be fat, you know." She actually said that I was fat and accused me of trying to make her daughter fat. At this point, I'm really angry. "Are you serious? You think I'm trying to manipulate your daughter to be fat?" She says, "Yes, actually. You never seem to exercise and you're spending a lot of time with my daughter." I try to close the door. "Yeah, well, you're wrong. I think I'm done with this conversation now. Bye." I get a little angry when people provoke me, so I flip her off for some reason. She says, "I don't like your attitude, young man. I demand you break up with my daughter and never speak to her again." I say, "I won't do that. I'm really happy with her, and she doesn't seem to mind that I'm a little out of shape. I'm not going to break up with her." At this point, she's red like a tomato and storms off while muttering to herself. I think it's over, but 2 days later, my ex calls me while crying. She says, "How could you?" I say, "What do you mean? Is everything all right?" She says, "You cheated on me. My mom told me everything. She saw you with another girl." Yes, her mom had lied to her and said that I was cheating on her just to break us up. I say, "What? I haven't been with another girl." She says, "Forget it. It's over. Don't call me. It's over." She hung up. I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe what the mother had done. That summer I decided to work out and get in shape. Not to get her back, but for my own sake. After I was in good shape, the entitled mom approaches me on the street. She says, "Hi, I saw you walk by and you look finally really good." Yeah, that was the first thing she said. I say, thanks. I really don't want to talk to you after what you did. She says, "I was thinking, now that you're not fat anymore, maybe you wanted to be with my daughter again? She's really heartbroken after you cheated on her, and I think that she wants you back." I say, "First of all, no, I won't do that. Second of all, I didn't cheat on her. You said I did." She got really mad really fast. She says, "You're being very rude again. Of course you cheated on my daughter. That's why she broke up with you. Go be with my daughter this instant." I say, "No, I'm already over her, and I don't want to end up in your family ever again." She says, "Come with me. We're going to your ex." She grabbed me by the arm and started dragging me to her car. I shoved her and started running while she cursed at me. She said something about a lawsuit, but I never heard from them again. I don't know if this belongs here, but I wanted to share this with you. Again, sorry for the long text and confusing grammar. And r/, if you're reading this and in like the slightest, I would love to be in a video. Huge fan. Thanks for reading. r/, you want to be in r/ this video? I mean, you'd be much better off being in an Imagine If the Internet Was Real video. I mean, come on. Oh, well, that does it for the stories today. It's a bit of a shorter one than the last few days. I don't know if you guys appreciate the extra long videos or these sort of regular length videos, but either way, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.